Off the back of a question in the comments, there was an interesting sort of theme and an idea that came out of it around the easiest way athletes get injured. So today I want to share that with you and my thoughts on how athletes can get injured really, really easily and basically the path to avoiding it. Plus, I'm going to dive into some updates on the channel and some various things going on that are going to be coming up over the next little while to keep you posted on some different ideas that I'm working through. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Nick here, talking science of endurance and everything sports science in general. Welcome to the channel. If you're watching for the first time or you've watched before and you've really enjoyed some of the videos, please consider subscribing down below by hitting that big red button. Definitely helps to support the channel and keep things growing so I can make more videos and get more of your questions answered. And that's really where I'm going to head today in terms of, like I said in the intro, answering questions from an athlete regarding some concern about getting injured. But before I get into that, I just wanted to update you with a little bit of a project I'm going to be working on over the next little while. Today, if you missed it, and I might link it above in the card, down below in the description as well, was the first time I went live on YouTube. So I did a live Q&A, took the 5 top questions that I'd received in the comments, gave a shout out to everyone who submitted one of those questions and that I picked from it as well. So an easy way to get your name called out up on the channel here. These were some of the questions that I haven't necessarily done a video on. If you're interested in looking at it, again, it was linked above just before, but also it's down in the description below. I also answered a couple of live questions as well, and we've got some interaction going. So it's something I'm going to be working on in the future. We're going to keep you posted about when live streams are going to happen. Going to try and get you guys on as guests and set up some systems so you can basically get all of your questions answered. We can go back and forth, have some great discussions, get some maybe some experts on as guests as well. A very different setup to what we've got at the moment, where you can ask your questions as we go and I can answer them on the spot. I think that's the best way to interact with you guys, and I hopefully think you guys are going to get a lot out of it as well. Back to today's topic in terms of the easiest way to get injured is essentially coming down to a lack of chronic training load. The basis of the question that I had on the video was, I'm concerned about doing high intensity because I think I'm going to get injured. Or I'm concerned about running faster than I have before because I think I'm going to get injured. Doing the high intensity without having the preparation of the chronic training load behind you to be able to then go and do a full session at high intensity, that's the missing link. Quite often athletes and coaches will be like, oh, let's do some high intensity, and bang, we jump straight in. We do a full session as we normally would. We're in 6 by 3 minute efforts at VO2 max, but now we're doing it at 10 seconds per kilometer faster. We haven't changed the volume of the session. So now we've got a hell of a lot more training load. And our acute training load, what we call our acute training load, spikes through the roof. You might see this on, if you use Training Peaks, it's the pink line when you're looking at any of your graphs, often indicates things like fatigue and your TSS and all of this combined. But it's the type of thing where we're really dramatically spiking what training load we're receiving in a very short period of time. It's like going from, if you went and sat on the couch for 6 weeks, did absolutely nothing, and then went out and tried to run a marathon, you're probably going to run yourself a high risk of injury. Why? Because you've gone from 0 to 100 really, really quickly. That's when the body's at its most vulnerable state. So when we're in this vulnerable period, what is going on? We have a very low training base because we've essentially done nothing, and we're trying to go run a marathon. We're trying to run it really quickly. We're not exposed to the pace that we want to be running at. We're not exposed to the volume either, or the muscular endurance side of things. What we're missing is a chronic training load. And chronic training load is just a build up of essentially Ks and legs, is a very simplified way of talking about it. But it's accumulating over a long period of time or extended period of time, this consistent stimulus to allow the body to do what it needs to do. This is why when we get into seasonal type sports, it's the type of thing that we do all this work pre-season, we get into the first race might be okay, but then as we go race by race, you might not actually be increasing how much training you're doing or necessarily doing too much differently to your training. You're not, trying to push yourself harder and harder. You're just trying to maintain. By the end of the season, you end up being pretty sort of good, and you actually start seeing some improvement. And basically, it's a result of you haven't actually continued to build. If anything, your training volume or your training load is kind of plateaued. But it's all this chronic load that you've built up beforehand. All of that preparation work that has gone into the beginning of the season is what's then going to help carry you through. It's the same why team sport athletes do such a big pre-season. So you want to build a large amount of training load so you can get into the season and just do what you need to do, which is perform on game day or perform on a weekend whenever you your fixture structure works. That's where we need to perform. But if we build up the chronic training load, we much reduce our risk because the body can tolerate all of these different stimuluses. It can tolerate some of the high speed. The hamstrings in particular have built up resilience to high speed running. That's a key one for team sport athletes, but particularly for triathletes and endurance athletes who don't do a lot of really high intensity sprinting type running. We're missing that stimulus a lot of the time. I'm not saying you have to go out and do it, But when we try and do VO2 intervals, or we try and work at 100% of VO2 max, 105%, it gets to a point where we can't do lots of volume at it, because we have to build it very, very progressively, and we kind of push ourselves. You end up pushing it to the side because you go, well, it's going to take me a while to build up to it, or you're fearful of doing a hamstring or doing an Achilles or something by going straight into it, all guns blazing without any preparation. So all I'm talking about here is the easiest way to prevent majority of injuries that we see is to just progressively build over a long period of time. It's constantly adding on little blocks. And I've spoken about like building Lego blocks and things like that before. It's basically like that. You take the first block is your first block of 4 weeks. You put another one on top. You put another one on top. The more blocks you put together, the higher the tower is. And that's all we're trying to do, is try and build that overall chronic load. Now, this doesn't mean you necessarily have to go and do big volume in the week. You don't have to go out and train 20 hours a week to have this tolerance. It's the type of thing you just need to be smart, and you have to have a consistent routine. That's probably the kicker here. Consistency is always going to be key over just doing massive volume. And like I said, it has to be a progressive consistency where there's some sort of building to it. Really, like I said, it's the easiest way to prevent injuries. And this is why a lot of athletes jump on the strength bandwagon, and why strength gets such a good rap. At the end of the day, strength training isn't necessarily doing a massive amount for majority of endurance athletes. Yes, there is going to be some performance benefit in terms of the neuromuscular improvements from strength training. There's also going to be a little bit of a benefit in terms of a little bit of muscular size. Isn't going to hurt to put some extra power out in the bike or help propel you forward a bit more. Sure. What it is going to do is just build some of this chronic training load without necessarily having to get you out and swim and cycle, run, whatever your sport is. It's building training load in another way, getting the muscles resilient to some other different types of forces as well. But all of these types of things we're trying to build in just a different way in the gym, but this total accumulation of chronic training load and building a good base, and this is why base is, I guess, so critical when we talk about that, is it's just building this chronic ability to tolerate whatever's being thrown at us. So that as we move through a training plan, our body can handle whatever the change in stimulus is. We start doing some race-specific stuff. We do some really high-intensity work. We do some threshold work. Whatever it is, your body's prepared to do it. And that's where we can avoid as much of the injury. The second sort of little component to that, if we're talking now specific to the high-intensity example before, if you're an athlete that might be concerned about, I don't want to do fast running or near maximal running because I think I'm going to get injured as a result, a lot of that fear just comes out of, like I said before, having to do a full session at it. You don't. Bring it in slowly. I mean, personally, at the moment, I'm doing some high velocity, near maximum sprinting speed stuff because it's specific for my training, but I'm doing it once a week, and I'm doing about 4 actual high speed efforts in the entire session. Why? Because I'm progressively building how much tolerance I have to that. I don't need to be match fit again until January, February rolls around again. So I've got a long period of time to build that back up. But I started out, I did 2 flying efforts as like 20, 30 meter efforts as hard and as fast as I could, after doing some preparation work even before that to build up to 80%, 90%, then 100% of max speed. Now I'm building from 20 and 30 meter efforts to 40 to 50 meter efforts, and then I'll build to 50 to 60 meter efforts, progressively building it up. And then once I can do 50, 60 meter efforts, then I'm going to start to work on, all right, can I do 4 of them in a session? Can I do 5? Can I do 6? Start to slowly increase, and it's all about this gradual accumulation of training load. So that's just my sort of thoughts on really the easiest way to avoid injury for any athlete, regardless of who you are. Chronic training load is king. Avoiding big rapid spikes in acute training load, like it's doing nothing for a couple of weeks and then going out and running a massive amount of Ks or doing a big, heavy, hard session, whatever it is. Avoid these big peaks. We just want it to be nice, consistent, gradual. That's going to win out. Consistency is the key. That's always going to be the way forward in terms of improving not only performance, but minimizing the injury along the way. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about this sort of, I guess, thought process around chronic training load and how to prevent injuries? Love to hear your thoughts as always in the comments. Any questions, leave them down there too. Looking forward to seeing some of you in the next live stream. I'll keep you posted as to when that is going to be coming, and I'm going to try and keep that updated on Instagram as to when I'm going live. So make sure you are following my Instagram page. I'll link it down below so you can keep up to date with when those live streams are going to happen, so you can jump in, interact, get your questions answered, and hopefully we can help each other in the process. That is it for today, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.